Do you remember the first person you helped escape exploitation? What was going through your mind?
Honestly, what if someone is there other than her? And what am I gonna do if they are?
Teri Gore. She is a mother,
a strong leader,
and the director of a nonprofit called The Hub.
Our friends that we serve in those two ministries, although may not be physically sick, they are in need of assistance. They're in need of things that we have to offer. Value and dignity is one of the most important pieces of that puzzle.
Another branch of the Hub is called Purchased Not for Sale. The focus is on rescuing women and children from exploitation and sex trafficking. How serious is this problem in South Louisiana?
It's really scary. We need to watch our kids. We need to pay attention to the online services that our kids are on. Everybody has a vulnerability. There's someone out there looking for it.
You use the word friends when referring to the people that you help. What kind of relationships have you formed running the Hub?
There's just a sense of connection that comes when you can sit down with someone, look them in the eyes, and really just hear their heart. When I would go out on the streets and do the street walks and talk to our friends, not necessarily having anything to say and not having to fix anything, I'm just here for you to listen. So they are my friends, and I would do anything for them.
If someone listening to this episode sees a problem in their community and wants to start a nonprofit, a project, something to address that problem, what would you say to them? Teri, at what point did you decide that it was time to start a nonprofit?
Oh, Lord. I had been feeling convicted from God for probably a year, and I fought it, knowing that I wanted to be a part of missions. Actually, I wanted to do missions foreign. I wanted to be a foreign missionary. And being a mom and having kids, I was like, I can't leave this world, but what I could do is try to go to work at a church, our church, and lead missions and fulfill both. And so I started a prayer journal with God in reference to, like, where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do? And orphanage fell on my heart because I love kids. So I actually pursued that, took a class online on how to start an orphanage, what all the details of that look like, prayed about that, and nothing ever came to fruition. And my heart just stirred. I knew I was called to more than what I was doing. At this time in my life, I had realized that all the gifts that God had given me, from my ability to sell, communicate, connect, all those things, I was using for myself. I was focused on my job in commercial sales, using all of the gifts that God gave me just to create that atmosphere to where we were comfortable together, so you would buy something from me, so I'd make money. And I had been convicted that I needed to no longer do that, but to turn my focus on God. And I pursued that relationship with Him and felt convicted that as I looked at His face, He was calling me to use those gifts for more than myself. He was calling me to use those gifts for Him. And so in that, I knew that I needed to leave that job and to go into ministry. But landing at the Hub was really a beautiful gift. My cousin had started the Hub in Shreveport at this time, probably 10 years ago. And in the story, about 10 years ago. And then I felt called to start the Hub here. And I reached out to her and she said, Teri, you're not going to believe this, but Brent and I just felt called by God to give it away. And so that's when the journey began. I went on a mission trip to Guatemala with my team and prayed about it and told Ed, hey, I want to quit my job. This is what I want to do. And we got back and I told him, I'm going to quit. And he was like, okay. So I went in and quit, and I thought he was going to have a heart attack. You know, he was a procrastinator from a sense of he thought I was going to wait, make a plan. So that's really how I got into the Hub, into doing what I do, really feeling called to respond to God. And then in that, giving up everything I knew and everything I was grounded in for something that I had no idea how to fulfill that role. I had no idea what that would look like, and I had no idea the cost it would bring upon my life, but did not care.
Was it hard to leave behind your career in commercial sales, insurance? Because I would imagine you were doing financially very well in that career.
Yes, and it was who I was. It was my identity. And it was probably the reason that it took me a year, because quitting a job where you have the ability to make as much money as you're willing to work for, to go do something where it's not about money and you'll have no money, let's be transparent, was, in the world's eyes, everything about my decision was wrong. There was not one logical reason, not one thing that I could sit down with you and say, because of this, I need to leave this job and go into ministry. It was about literally being faithful and trusting God that if I turn my back on all of these things that I have generated for myself through the gifts that you gave me, the gift that you gave me of doing that, can I turn my back on that and trust you? And it was about faith and trusting God. And it really felt, honestly, like I just jumped. And it was a long, hard fall. A lot of bumps going down the fall. Like there were rocks out there like I didn't know about. But through all of that, God really has proven to be faithful in every aspect. I have more now in my life than I did when I had all the money, the access to all of the perks that come with being in commercial sales. I would trade that life over and over again for the life that I have today. I mean, I wish I could go back and start my life doing what I'm doing today, way back then.
The mission of the Hub serves two groups of people. One branch is the Lovewell Center, which helps people experiencing homelessness or who are in poverty. The other branch is called Purchased, which rescues women and children from exploitation and sex trafficking. Out of all the demographics of people that you could potentially help, why those two?
Well, those two really reflect the heart of God. They are in need of someone to have a voice for them. They're in need of someone willing to step up and stand in the gap for them. They are the pieces of the world that have had the world turn its back on them. They are labeled as things that they are not. They are not given the credit for the gifts and the love that they have to offer. They also are children of God, just like you and I, and have fallen on hard times and have made mistakes and have been at the wrong place at the wrong time and need someone to step up and be willing to take a hit on behalf of them, to be willing to leverage all that I can for their benefit. So the Hub is really about giving each group of those individuals that you spoke about are our friends. They are someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's son, someone's grandparents. They're somebody's as well as God's child. So creating that opportunity for them to have dignity and value put back in is the gift of God. That's what Jesus does for us. So reflecting Jesus, being the hands and feet of Him in the middle of the community that the world has pushed away. I mean, the Lord says that He does not come to those who already are healed. He goes to those who are sick. And so our friends that we serve in those two ministries, although may not be physically sick, they are in need of assistance. They're in need of things that we have to offer. And value and dignity is one of the most important pieces of that puzzle. Isolation is the one thing in the world that can drive you crazy and kills most people in this world. The lack of feeling belonging, a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose. And so we have the privilege to sit and love, treat people with common courtesy and equality when it comes to you and I are no different,
I want to talk about the Lovewell Center first, and then we can talk about Purchased a little bit later. When it comes to it's people who are experiencing homelessness, what are some of the signs that you've seen of someone heading down the path that ends in not having a home?
Not having enough money, having a job where they work tirelessly and the cost of living is going up, wages are not going up. It's kind of really sad. Most of our friends who are experiencing chronic poverty are working more, harder jobs, odder hours, long hours, the odd hours, having to rely on public transportation that is not free, that does not run on the weekend, which is when most of our friends can get the shifts that they need, because others who get to choose don't want to work the Saturday, the Sunday. But the individuals who have the opportunity to work those may not have transportation, drug habits, alcoholism, where those habits have become a way to cover the hurt, or whatever may be causing them to feel uncomfortable. It may relieve that, so they may lean on that habit more. Lack of ability to manage money, generational poverty. Some of our friends have no idea how to manage money. Some of our friends, when they receive money, they want to spend it today, not planning ahead, to pay their bills and those kind of things. So probably some of the signs literally would be just honestly everyday life of the hardship of not having enough money to make ends meet. And then you start picking and choosing, robbing from Paul to pay Peter. And before you know it, you've ended up losing all avenues of monetary, support. And then most of the time when they go into the programs, once you get into a program, it becomes a codependency. And so trying to get out of that, then also there's a huge gap, and the gap is widening. So although we at the Level Center have stepped in to try to close that gap, we're like this trying to close that gap. Offsetting cost of living with opportunities to come to the Level Center. So I really just think when we see it happening, it's really just, I don't know if you can imagine what it would be like to have a job, to be working really hard, maybe to be mistreated in your job, to not be able to make your rent, what you would feel like. And in response to how you feel, then what you would turn to. So from an addiction standpoint,
Explain the idea behind the membership-based program as opposed to using other ways of helping people.
Membership program really stems from belonging. It's like belonging to Reds. It's like belonging to Costco. We actually give out cards. The cards say the Level Center, you are a member. We really speak more in a family perspective. We're part of the family now, right? But the card is a reflection of ownership. It creates a sense of value and purpose, that I belong, that this is my home. So it's really just trying to create that unity of you're not alone in the world, you're not an outcast in the world, you belong here.
I noticed earlier you used the word friends when referring to the people that you help. What kind of relationships have you formed running the hub?
Oh my goodness. Heartbreaking relationships. I absolutely love each and every person that God brings in there. And I don't know if you can, I don't know if that's hard to believe or not, but there's just a sense of connection that comes when you can sit down with someone, look them in the eyes, and really just hear their heart. One of the problems that I had as an individual person myself was I showed people that I loved them by giving them gifts, usually spending money. And when I changed jobs, that could not happen. And I remember really struggling, like how are the people that I love going to know I love them? And God revealed to me, it's time. No one ever wanted my money anyway. No one ever wanted my gifts anyway. Don't mistake the fact I'm sure my kids didn't mind. But in the end, people want your time. They want your attention. And so when the Lord revealed that to me, I was so blessed to be able to sit and visit with the members that come. When I would go out on the streets and do the street walks and talk to our friends, it became a place where I could allow them in and love them by simply looking them in the eye and listening. Not necessarily having anything to say and not having to fix anything. I'm just here for you to listen. So they are my friends, and I would do anything for them.
Do you remember several years ago when the city put up these red signs all across town? The signs said, panhandling is not safe, change the way you give. And then it also had a hotline number for people to call. What was your reaction to those signs?
I don't think I can say it. No. It was very disheartening. I respect not forwarding on the ability of true panhandling. It's not right, right? There are people who are just panhandlers. They simply stand on the road, they take your money, they go home and live in a house, and they have a car, and life is beautiful, and they play on people's sympathy and your empathy towards people who appear to not have. For me, I wish the sign would have read a little less harsh, from a sense of not saying that panhandlers themselves are bad people, because a lot of my friends do panhandle to pay for a hotel room to keep their child from being on the street, or panhandle to make sure they're not on the street. They pay for hotel rooms. So it was very disheartening in the way in which it rolled out. I wish that it could have been less harsh in its verbiage and really granted more of, hey, you know, you're a generous community. We know you want to give. Let's try to give in a different avenue. But the intentionality behind the sign was to stop panhandling, and that's the right of every human being to be able to ask for money. You can't stop someone from doing that. So it was a little difficult. Had mixed feelings. I respect that at the time that the sign was put up, things were shared with me that we had a drug problem. You know, that's back when things were running pretty hard and heavy with the drugs being handed out, and the drug dealers were using our homeless friends to do that. So yes, there was that avenue that paralleled. So I can understand being responsible, but it also created a sense of fear and created a sense of separation, to where those people and us in the world that I live in the world that I hope that the Lord creates here, there's no those, there's us. We're all in this together, you know? So I felt like the signs were harsh.
I think everyone's been in a situation where they saw someone on the side of the road panhandling, or maybe they were walking in the streets and someone comes up to them asking for money. Everyone's probably been in a situation like that. I know for me, I've been asked several times, not just for money, but maybe just for food. And I'm totally okay with buying someone a meal, buying someone water. That's like a basic necessity. What would you say is the right strategy in those situations?
I'll tell you what I do. I don't know if it's the right strategy. We're all different in how we view things. But for myself, I feel like being able to look someone in the eyes and acknowledge that they're there. If you're capable of having a conversation, say, hey man, how you doing? What's going on? We have cards at the hub that you can take. And one of the things that I share at the end of my talks is, if you see someone, my challenge is for you to look them in the face and say hello. Because the one thing that is affirming is that you see someone. The person standing in the corner asking for something is not beneath you, right? So just acknowledge that they're there. Smile, hello, how you doing, peace out, whatever. But if you want to give them something, you can give them the card to the Level Center and say, hey, I don't have anything for you, but this place does. Because I have found a lot of people try to avoid those situations because they don't have anything to give. Or maybe the person's rude to you when you don't give them something. You know, they can flip you off. I mean, my thought is, well, just tell thanks for calling me number one. What does it matter? Right? But to be able to offer the individual that you meet, the person that you come across, a place to get their needs met, is what God has called us to do. If you feel led by the Holy Spirit that you want to give them money, do so. It's not up to you how they spend that money. But for me, I'll tell them where the hub is. I'll give them a card to the hub And I'll say, hey, come meet me there on Tuesday nights. And once we get them there on Tuesday nights, then we can help them with food, clothing. If they're looking for shelter, we can put them in contact with someone who can, because we don't do shelters. We don't have the ability to place people in shelters. We just have contacts with people that we reach out to. But we can help get them set on the right path if that's what they're looking for. So if you want to bring someone a meal, I think nothing is more beautiful than to sit down and eat with someone you don't know. Absolutely love that. The reason we do community meal at the Level Center is because everyone has conversation when they eat. You and I can sit down together, not know each other. We may not talk at all, but if we brought out something to eat before it was over with, I'm sure we would talk, because the food would be the distraction that took away the awkwardness between you and I, which would allow us to have conversation. Which is why family dinners are always so important, right? That's why moms are always like, put your phone down, just come and sit, everybody have family dinner, right? Because that connection occurs over the relaxation of some distraction. And although food is a distraction in this situation, it helps aid the ability to have a conversation.
Another branch of the hub is called Purchased Not for Sale. The focus is on rescuing women and children from exploitation and sex trafficking. Some people may think that because they live in a small town or they live in a small state, that it isn't a serious problem. How serious is this problem in South Louisiana?
Well, I want to clarify, for the hub, through the purchase program, we actually partner with, or will partner with, the police and FBI, who will actually do the rescuing. I don't get the privilege to go in and knock the doors down. We will actually be the asset that comes in to take care of the ladies or the children at the level that we can. It's here in our city. It's very prevalent across where we are, simply because of the corridor that we run through. So, having I-10 that runs this way, 49 that runs this way, 20 up in North Louisiana. There's a huge area of Texas all the way across to New Orleans. And we are a stopping place. We also have centers here. They patrol and actually looking for human trafficking suspected victims on 49 and on I-10 right now. So I know that recently for us, we've had 10 in our community cases of human trafficking. Now, human trafficking can either be labor or sex trafficking. That is the combination of the two. And just the Sound of Freedom coming out brought a lot of awareness to the idea that human trafficking can be here. And in where we live, human trafficking is not necessarily portrayed simply like the movie. We don't necessarily have places where we would drop our kids off, we would leave, and then come back and our kids would be gone. But we do have a sincere and very strong presence of individuals who are grooming our children. Online presence is huge, where our children, if you remember back when you were a child, there's probably a time maybe between the ages of 10 and probably maybe be until you're 19 or 20, where you have conflict with your parents. It's just natural. You're trying to grow up, you're trying to take authority, you're trying to be you, and they're trying to protect you, watch over you, and so there's this conflict. Well, in our world today, for human trafficking, I would come in and drive that wedge even wider between you and your parents. So you would choose to not be with your parents, you would choose to be with me. Right? So there's a false sense of love, there's a false sense of security, and I am using what you've already created against you, against your parents, to get you to want to be with me. So for us, human trafficking is extremely scary because it stems itself along that individual more than likely being coerced into doing things they don't want to do out of a false sense of love. So, it's very scary with the identity crisis that we have going on in our world today. Everybody has a label, everybody has an issue, everybody wants to be you, just be you. It's all about self. And when the world is turned to look at itself as each individual is the most important thing in the world, then it's easy to find the differences between you and per se your parents and just push it. And then before you know it, you're not going home for family dinner, you're coming and hanging out with me. And then when you and I are really close and I can't actually meet the needs that you have, I'll pass you on to my pimp. And then I'm gonna go find someone else. And by the time you realize what has happened, you're in. It's really scary in our days today. You know, we need to watch our kids. We need to pay attention to the online services that our kids are on. I mean, every other day they're opening up a new back door on how to solicit our kids, how to trap our kids. You know, everybody has a vulnerability. There's someone out there looking for it. I heard a preacher speak. He was doing a seminar actually here at the Bayou, and the story that he shared was so, man, just really struck my heart. He was saying that he looked outside one day and there was this drug dealer, and the drug dealer was standing on the corner. And he said everywhere he went, he saw the drug dealer standing on the corner. He was standing on the corner when he went to the grocery store. He was standing on the corner when he went to the park. He was standing on the corner when he came out of church. He was standing on the corner, no matter where he went, he was just standing by himself. He said, one day I walked over and I was like, hey, why are you just standing here? The drug dealer said, you know, they see you one day, 1 hour a week. They see me every day and everywhere they go. That's our reality with human trafficking. Our kids get sucked into a world where they're desensitized to the fact that these things are capable of happening to them. You know, it's very scary.
Do you remember the first person you helped escape exploitation or being trafficked?
Actually, for myself, we haven't done that here. I have gone to pick up a young lady in New Iberia and taken her to a safe place. And, you know, in fairness, it was intimidating, but it was something that I told myself I have no choice but to do, right? You know, somebody has to do it, so I'll go do it. I think that's the scariest part for Ed, because I'm willing to go do it. But as far as the details of her story, that I can't share, but we in Lafayette, this is actually, the purchase part of it is actually kicking off now. I had a meeting this past week. We're laying the groundwork for it. So we do have the residential home. We do have some other pieces of the puzzle already in place. But no, I did also have the chance of, you know, having experience of some of it in Shreveport.
What was going through your mind that first time?
Honestly, what if someone is there other than her? And what am I going to do if they are? Like, what am I willing to do? I have this, it's probably a horrible part of my personality, but I kind of plan for the worst in hopes that I simply respond when it happens. So trying to come up with a plan on what I would do. And you know, nothing happened. All was great. She was there, standing on the same corner where she said. She got in the car and we left. So it was fine. But I guess just like naturally intimidated, afraid, to the point of like, okay, I need a plan. But truthfully, I mean, I'm willing to do it. And if something happens to me, I'm willing to take that. You know, I feel like if God called me to do this, He'll equip me to do it. He'll give me the skills to do the things that I need to do when I need to do them. And if I go helping someone, I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm rested in that.
For those who go through the steps of your recovery program, how different are they after they finish it?
We haven't actually done the program here, but I can share from Shreveport. So Shreveport's actually doing the program. There are several graduates from there who actually have a beautiful, fulfilled life. They have a job, they have a house, they have a car, they have friends that they still maintain through the program of Purchase, because Purchase takes the opportunity to go all the way back to the beginning of life, like birds and the bees. What did God intend for sex to be? What did God intend here? And try to lay a groundwork and a foundation to build on. And that foundation will be built on a relationship with Christ. And so having that, being able to go through anything that comes up in the future, they can always revert back to that grounding of that foundation. So the purpose of the classes and of all the different skills that are taught and opportunities that are given is really to lay that groundwork, to have something to lean on, because we find that most of the individuals that come through the purchase program maybe have had generational poverty, and so they didn't know, because you only know what you grow up knowing, right? You look at money the same way you saw your parents do money. You look at sex the same way that you whatever your environment was is what you see. And so to shed some light on the opportunity that life isn't all that's in that box that you were in. There's more to it, and there are different opportunities to it. And so to have them go through those classes, to learn some skills, to be able to be a part of a community and have friends, to be able to get out and to be able to trust, and to be able to learn who to trust and who to call if you're not sure if you should trust them, you know. So the ladies that have graduated from the program in Shreveport, all of them are doing wonderful. They all have jobs, they all have houses, they attend church. And I think some of them have had a struggle here or there, but they've been able to avoid addictions and things like that. But really that's coming from not the program as much as it comes from the women buying into the program. I mean, we can do programs all day long, but if the individual, if the young lady, if the man at the Level Center, if they don't buy into wanting, they have to have that desire. And that desire doesn't come from me wanting them to have it. That desire comes from within. That comes from knowing their value, from knowing their purpose, from knowing that they have a purpose. And that drive then innates all of these things to come to fruition. But if that never happens, all the programs in the world will not help them.
As the executive director of the Hub, what are some of the challenges that you face running a nonprofit?
Well, let's see. Probably the most personal challenges of putting myself aside and not taking things personally. When someone says, oh, I love what you do, but not in my backyard, preferably like my neighbors. Loving my neighbors. Probably the hardest part of my job is to constantly remain in a state of mind where I'm trying to reflect Jesus all the time. There's not an opportunity not to reflect Jesus. Because the moment that I don't reflect Jesus and I'm who Teri is without Jesus is the moment that I hurt the one thing God has given me to steward. Because that will be the thing used against me, which will reflect upon the ministry that the Lord gave me to steward over. So probably maintaining a Christ-like behavior when I'm not bent that way as Teri, you know.
And I'm sure you had to learn these things as you go, because starting a nonprofit, having not done one before, I'm sure had lots of challenges as well.
Yes. Leadership, learning to lead, being a servant leader and not a dictatorial leader, how would I say that? Not to be a leader that just told people what to do, but create opportunities for others. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned was ministry that the Lord has given me is to create opportunities for others to be the hands and feet of Jesus. That doesn't mean my friends at the Lovewell only. That doesn't mean my friends at Purchase only. That means my church. That means other churches. That means volunteers. And that means my employees. And when that sunk in, that I am here to create opportunities for each one of the young ladies and the men who I get the privilege to serve alongside of, to be all that they can be, then my view was to move out from in front of them, to move beside them, to say, hey, what can I do for you to create an opportunity for you to be all that God has called you to be, and not have the plan already laid out. Like, this is what I want you to do. This is what I want you to do. Now, we all have lanes and we all have our jobs, you know, so that we are functioning at a high capacity. But I don't necessarily have your job laid out for you. I have here's your scope. Now, how are we gonna do this? So you can bring pieces of you in there and actually lay that out. So probably my biggest challenge was learning to lead like that, to actually step out of the way and allow people to do that. And I literally believe that I learned that when my children were probably 17 and 18, having a moment where the Lord said, okay, now it's time, where I didn't want to have conflict with my kids, so I let go and said, we're not going to have conflict. All I want from you is common courtesy and respect. All you want from me is common courtesy and respect. Whatever you do, consequences are yours. I will no longer step in front of you. I will let you make your choices in life. And that, granting them that, granted me the biggest gift of life, right? Maintaining a relationship I'd worked so hard to get. I didn't lose. Looking at that and then seeing the opportunity that God has given me through this ministry, I was like, this is the same thing. It's the exact same thing. That gift has allowed me to serve alongside other women, to serve alongside men, to walk with volunteers, to walk with my friends and say, hey, what do you want? It's not about me, it's about you. Instead of this is what I think you should do, this is what do you want to do and how can I help you do it?
If someone listening to this episode sees a problem in their community and wants to start a nonprofit, a project, something to address that problem, what would you say to them?
Do it. Do it. Don't hesitate. If God has shown you that there is a need, your responsibility out of a response to who He is and what He's done for you is to jump and trust that He will take care of all the details. I never doubted that He would show up and show off. Yet I am amazed at how He shows off. You know, how much He has granted. If you don't know what to do or where to start, reach out. Reach out to someone who is doing what you feel called to do and doing it well. If you don't know anyone, reach out to me. I'll let you talk to my cousin who started the hub in Shreveport, who could maybe lead you in ideas if I have no ideas, right? But just don't sit still.
I think the work you're doing here is awesome. Your leadership is amazing. So thank you so much for coming on and talking about this.
Well, thank you for having me, Harrison.